Hey everyone, my name is Alyssa Chartier. I am the brand manager over here at Boondockers Welcome. Absolutely love it. I'm a full-timer myself. I'm in my in-laws' house at the moment, but I have a 26-foot Airstream just sitting right outside there. We've been members of Boondockers Welcome for about 2 years now. Absolutely love it. And I also have Judith and Ian with me, who are Boondockers Welcome hosts. Judith and Ian, welcome. Hi. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. How long have you been Boondockers Welcome hosts?
This would be our fourth year now, I think.
Yeah,
We went through 4 summers of hosting, and this was certainly our busiest.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
And I
We
want to
started out
jump.
as Boondockers, though.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes.
then let's back up a little bit.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into RVing, what you do for a living, all the basics, what your bio, if you will.
I'll start. So in 2017, we started talking about what retirement was going to be like. And we had that dream that everybody has that we would sell everything and move into our RV. And then we had a dear friend be diagnosed with cancer and sadly pass away in 5 months. And as we were leaving his house one day after visiting, we looked at each other over the roof of our car and said, what are we waiting for? Why? We both worked virtually way before it was popular to work virtually. We both work virtually. What are we waiting for? So we bought a 37-foot Class A, and by 2000 and May 1st of 2019,
18,
19,
19, right.
19, we hit the road, and for the first couple of days, because there was no campgrounds in Ontario that were open, it was still not season yet. We lived in my friend's driveway who just fit our vehicle. And then we started out and we were out for
Over.
till October, well, September, but it was around June when we realized that we wouldn't be able to full time. We had sold our house, sold our stuff. We'd moved into a couple of storage units in Ottawa. And we realized that we couldn't make it across to Victoria, which is really the only place in Canada that you can, full time. And so we decided to stay in the Maritimes. Ian's from here. Our son was in university here, and then COVID hit, and so
I'm plan went out the window. It's like everybody else's plans.
we quickly pivoted to Plan B and did something we thought we'd never do again, which is buy a house. And we came off the road. We realized after 6 months of being RVing together that while it was great, it didn't work for us. So
Yeah, and working virtually was good, but we had to be inside Canada
Yeah.
to work. So that really restricted as Judy said. In the winter in Canada, it's really only in Victoria that you can winter in Canada unless you're really, really hardy, and we weren't.
yeah,
So we bought a house and then we just converted into seasonal travels with the motorhome
Yeah.
around the Maritimes, down into the eastern, into the Finger Lakes district and upstate New York and places like that. And that's when we became hosts, was at the same time. We opened the driveway. We couldn't fit our own rig in our driveway, so we parked out at my sister's, but we opened our driveway up to 25-foot rigs.
Yeah.
And the first year I think we did 12 or 15, and then this past season I think this one that's coming next week will be number 24 for this year for us.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah. And we've met some amazing, well, even when we were using Boondockers, well, we still keep in touch with people that we boondocked with, and we became hosts and we've met some amazing people from all over the world. It's just been such a fun.
We've been invited to Southern Georgia to come visit a boondocker down there who we hosted here. We've been invited to 2 or 3 different places in Europe to go and return the favor, if you will.
Yeah.
So it really has opened up that community.
That is what I love about the Boondockers Welcome program, because it can get a little bit lonely on the road. And what's it all for if you're traveling, but you don't have anyone to share it with? Not just your partner, but people and community. And that's what I just love about the program.
We found when we were boondocking that if you made the least bit of effort to be sociable to your host, there's a very good chance you would be invited to either campfire or have a glass of wine in the backyard or that. And we return that favor as well. We invite people to come and sit. We've got a screened-in porch, and we're always sitting out there catching up on their stories and where they've been and stuff. So very sociable if you just crack the door a little bit.
I love to hear that. I'm curious. You said you guys are up in New Brunswick, right?
Yeah.
Was that in the path of totality this year for the eclipse by chance?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Did you guys get a visitor for the solar eclipse?
We didn't have anybody here right at that time, but we were sitting in our backyard watching it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was surreal.
Absolutely wonderful. I saw it from Colorado, only a partial, but I was curious
Yeah.
if you got anyone up for that. Walk me through a day in the life as a host. How are you prepping, going through the app? Like, what does it take to bring someone into your driveway?
Certainly the app makes it extremely easy. We've got the app on my phone, so you'll get the signal. We also get alternate, an email comes automatically at the same time. We're fairly responsive. We try to get back to people. Being on the other end of it, we appreciate being able to confirm that reservation. So we get back to people usually within a couple of hours. Um, and we always use the app because if we direct message people, we can run into data problems with cell phones, particularly if we don't know if they're from Europe or the States or where they are. So we always go through the app for all of our messages.
And it's a great way to keep a record of everything. If there's any problems on either side, then Boondockers has all the information.
And we use the automated response, which gives them sort of the quick instructions of how to get from the highway up the steep lane, first house on your right. So we put instructions right in our auto response, but we also send a personal response, just asking them to give us a rough idea of what time of day they're going to be here, so that we can make sure that we're here. We also, before we agree to anything, we check their profile, we check their rig size. Because we limit ourselves to 25 feet, we've had to say no to, I think, two who had 25-foot trailers on 20-foot trucks. That's just not going to fit in our yard. So we're very careful. But so having that rig information is really important to us. We try to restrict ourselves to Class Bs or small Cs. So that helps looking at their profile. And we'll just do a quick check. There's some people who say, "You're my only hope," and we will say, "Here's the aerial view," and we'll trade messages. "Here's the aerial view. Here's the restrictions. Do you know how to back up a hill?" So that's the messaging goes back and forth. But we've never had a problem. We've never had a no-show. We've had people cancel, but that happens. We've never had anybody not show up. And they tell us, we're going to be in between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. That's great. And we provide power and water and free Wi-Fi. We don't expect any charge for that or any compensation for that. And we always have a little welcome gift for people. There's a small bakery here in town, so we provide them a little bag of fresh made cookies from the bakery here in town. So all of that stuff just to make it a good response. But certainly going through the technology that you guys have makes it so much easier, and having the calendar and everything right there.
Yeah. And I mean, we get some people who are just here overnight and you can tell that they're not interested in engaging, and we are totally not offended by that. If they just want to, we've had people leave first thing in the morning and not say goodbye. But you know what? Everybody has whatever their deal is. It doesn't matter to us. It honestly doesn't matter. I know that there are people who get really kind of upset when someone doesn't say goodbye or they don't leave them a gift or a thank you or something. We know people appreciate what we offer, and that's fine with us.
Hmm. I'm curious, like you're telling me that you've met people from Europe who have extended invitations. Tell me about maybe a heartwarming memory or a fun story that stands out to you as a Boondockers Welcome host.
So we had one boondocker. She came down from Ontario, and she was driving a little tiny Ford Transit van that she and her dad had sort of put together.
She was 20.
She was about 20 years old, and it was a big road trip for her. And as she came in, and we were chatting in the driveway. She said she was having mechanical problems with her Transit, and she said it wouldn't come up the hill and it wouldn't get out of fourth gear. I said, "Listen, I have a friend who's a mechanic. Let's make arrangements. We'll take your rig out tomorrow just to have it checked." We checked it out, and unfortunately, her transmission had blown. And the mechanic actually said, "How did you get this far?" So we worked with our mechanic. She got in touch with her parents. It was a big bill. It's a transmission. I mean, there's no hiding that factor. But she stayed with us for 6 days. And her parents were thrilled that they knew exactly where she was. And at the end, they sent us a really nice card and said, thank you for looking after our daughter. We knew she was in a safe place, you know, good maritime spirit. So
Yeah.
it worked out well.
Yeah.
And then she stopped in on the way back from Newfoundland. She stopped in for the day. Unfortunately, we weren't here, but she knew our house so well by that point. We said, back in the yard, plug in and have at it, because you know where you are.
Yeah. And we've had repeats, and we've had repeats. We have another couple that travel from the States and go to Newfoundland for the summer every year. And they have turned into really good friends. And they just love Canada so much. And I mean, you know, we just and the stories when we get people from Europe, because we're so close to Halifax, a lot of people are starting to bring their rigs over from Europe to travel around North America rather than renting, because renting can be very expensive. And it's cheaper actually to bring the rig over. So they fly over and then they ship the rig over, which is great because they don't have to pack tons of suitcases. They just put everything into their rig and it's everything. And it's all there when the ship comes in. And then they drive. We're kind of the first spot that people stop at because we're 2 hours from Halifax. So we get a lot of people that literally have just come off the boat. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I
We've
I
become
was
we've
not
become
aware. Go ahead,
yeah,
go
we've
ahead.
become very good experts at getting the customs people when you put your rig on a boat to come to Canada. They tape every door, every window shut, so they know make sure that the vehicle has been inspected and sealed. Well, that tape doesn't come off very easily. So they're showing up in our driveway with like 55 pieces of tape all over their rig, trying to figure out how do we get this stuff off.
Yeah.
So we're becoming very adept with a heat gun and a very soft spatula to getting it off their rig for them.
You guys are kind of a car wash and a Boondockers Welcome host all in one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had some
But we've also had to give people from Europe, we don't give them lessons, but we certainly coach them on the size of North America. We had this really nice couple from Switzerland had shipped their rig over and they were driving to Alaska. Well, from here, that's 7,500 kilometers from here. So what, 5,000 miles? And they thought they were going to do that in a couple of weeks. We said, you really need to look at a map. It just took you 2 hours to get from Halifax. So now, you know, multiply that by 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks of driving every day and you won't see anything. So they amended their plan. And we've had other people who thought they would go through Canada first and then come back through the States. Or go through the States first and come back through Canada. And then we talk to them about our seasons. If you really don't want to be on the road in October in Canada, in BC,
Yeah.
because you can run into a snowstorm very quickly. So we tried to help them out.
That's wonderful. I know I was just in Scotland a few weeks ago, and I know I wish I'd had someone like you to talk me through driving and all of that stuff. They've got a ton of roundabouts over there.
Yeah. Oh, then don't go to Portugal because there's lots of roundabouts there too.
I'm terrified. I'm terrified of roundabouts. Well, that's wonderful. So you've met a lot of people coming over from Europe. I did not realize it was cheaper to ship your rig than to rent one, but I have looked at renting a rig for my in-laws, and it does get expensive fast. It's what, $100 a day, probably more, depending.
Well,
Yeah, the European couple that we had here, they shipped theirs over for 15,000 euros, which or 10,000 euros, which is about 15,000 Canadian. And for the same 6-month period, it would have cost them 75,000 Canadian to rent that rig.
Yeah.
So for them, it was a no-brainer. And as Judy said, you can load it up with all your clothes and bikes and toys and bathing suits, and it all just shows up. So there's no extra baggage fee when you ship your rig.
That is amazing. And that is
And
good to know.
I've had 2 or 3 friends that have used those owner rental companies, not naming any names, but owner rental companies, and they've had terrible experiences because most of those people don't want you driving their rigs. They usually want you to that you're going to a campground or you're going somewhere, you're not driving it around. And so it's just all 3 of them had horrible experiences. So, you know, you're really just renting from a rental company and they charge and you get nothing in them. If you want bedding, that's an additional charge. If you want kitchen stuff, and if you're coming from Europe, you're not bringing all that stuff with you.
And we've seen some
That's-
beautiful rigs from Europe too. That's the nice thing for us. We're very envious when you look at a European rig, having seen some of the North American rigs come through and sort of the European styling and the European quality. is quite dramatically different. And when you see these rigs up close, of course, people always want you to come into their rig and have a tour, even though it's a Class B and all three of us can't fit into their rig. But it's nice to have a look at the inside to see what's happening. So that's kind of whetted our appetite if we go to Europe to either buy or rent a European rig. Rather than, I don't think I would ship a Canadian rig the other way. First off, their roads are not big enough for most North American rigs. And I just like the look of the European rigs.
Yeah. But
They
getting
are
back to
nice.
having boondockers, the other thing that we do is we generally tell people what's going on in our area. And if we can do it ahead of time, because I mean, in the summer, obviously there's festivals and you know, fairs and all sorts of things happening. And we've had people who said, oh, could we stay 2 nights then instead of 1 night?
Yeah.
So I think that if you're a host and you really, if it, you know, everybody does what they can do, what they're able to do. And we're retired. So for us to do that, go that extra step, and I got that idea from Airbnb actually, because they sell these packages. So if you're going to an Airbnb spot, you can buy an Airbnb package, like a cooking package or a walking tour package. And I thought, well, maybe we could put something together for boondockers that come to our area, like what's available. And we have we have a world-renowned waterfowl park like literally across the street from us. And so we always kind of mention that. And so we've had people that are avid bird watchers that come in and stay for a couple of days to especially when there's a certain bird that's appeared in the waterfowl park.
Yeah, and we try to tell them, you know, like in the original, you know, review of their profile, we can usually tell from where they are coming from, which direction. Are they coming out of Nova Scotia? Are they coming up from the eastern seaboard up the States? So we kind of know the route that they're coming, and we'll point out things that they're going to pass on their way to our place that, you know, it may be 2 hours out of the way or maybe 10 minutes off the highway, but we try to point out some of the, you know, particularly some of the scenic drives along the ocean and say, hey, you're coming this way anyway.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of things you might want to pick up on your way by.
Yeah.
Man, that is so cool. I love how involved you guys are. You're very outgoing folks, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We
Yeah.
expect to see a 26-foot Airstream show up anytime soon, right?
Yeah.
We'll find a place for you to park. Don't worry.
We're actually trying to encourage our little town. I mean, we're in a town of 5,600 people, and we're trying to encourage our town to create an overnight spot for boondockers. I mean, there's no sewage facilities or water or power or anything, but there is a space by the Visitors Information Bureau actually where they could probably let 1 or 2 people stay overnight.
Yeah.
And that would be great for bigger rigs that can't fit into our place. And actually, we have another boondocker now in our boondocker host in our little town.
And you recruited them?
No, I don't know if we recruited them, but they have a Class B, I think. Yeah, they have a Class B, and I guess same thing. They were probably using Boondockers Welcome and which I love, by the way. I mean, we've met some incredible when we were boondocking. We went to this one Harvest Host place in Maine. It was a farm, and they have the best farm store I've ever seen. And I went in there and I said, "Oh my gosh!" And by the time I got out of there and put it all, I actually have a picture on my table of all the stuff I bought from the farm store. And I said to the owner, I said, Hollis, I think it would have been cheaper for me to just go to the KOA up the road and pay the nightly fee than it was for me to shop in your farm store.
But you can't eat what you buy at the KOA, but you
Yeah.
certainly could eat what we bought at that farm.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that the truth? You know, you go to a KOA and it's like $2 for a scoop of ice cream. So it stacks. It stacks up.
And you're butt to cheek. You're butt to cheek. You can hear the next person snoring. So that's not our style at all.
Well, we found an area, there's not many private campgrounds within about, I think the closest one for us is about an hour and 20 minutes away. So we see a lot of people, because we're right off the national Trans-Canada Highway on your way to Nova Scotia. A lot of people are on the way to Nova Scotia or heading to the ferry to Newfoundland. If we could handle bigger rigs, we would probably fill our driveway, you know, all summer long.
Yeah, all summer long.
So as Judy said, we're trying to encourage people. We tell people our story and say, it's, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. it's a chunk of your driveway, and you meet the most fabulous people.
Yeah.
And you get all these friends to show up. But to Judy's point about the town, we have a town that is, I wouldn't say it's anti-traveler, but there's no overnight parking for rigs anywhere in the town limits. And that to us is really small thinking, because even if someone's staying overnight, there's a very good chance they're going to buy gas, get some groceries,
Go to the restaurant.
go to the restaurant, visit your craft store.
Yeah.
So to try to turn the town around and say, why don't you use a packaged program like Boondockers? It's already there. It's already set up. Just
Yeah.
register the town.
Yeah.
And you can have 4 or 5 rigs a night.
Yeah. I mean, I've even thought of going to, we have a university, actually. It's the top small liberals arts school in Canada. And they've got some parking lots around which are empty at night in the summertime. So I thought of going to them and saying, could we use Boondockers Welcome but use your driveway and say, this is like, we'll register with security and have them stay there for bigger rigs.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to recruit you, Judith. We need to work in at Boondockers Welcome.
Well,
So
there's just so many opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I think if you just look around, there's so many opportunities to just be that good neighbor.
I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
safe.
Locally minded.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why people don't use Boondockers Welcome. I really don't. I have a friend who is full-timing in her car. She's actually in her car. And that, I mean, she can't, I guess maybe that's why she can't use Boondockers Welcome, because she's not
Self-contained.
self-contained. I guess maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But I couldn't imagine sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. I just don't get that.
Like our story said with the young lady who had car trouble. I mean, her parents were absolutely thrilled because they knew she was parked in a driveway much like their own,
Yeah,
with 2 people who were parents themselves, and they knew their daughter was 100% safe.
yeah,
So, stuff like that. You come off the road, Boondockers are a great place to be safe and to
Yeah.
park, and your rig is 100% safe.
We actually have friends who are Boondockers in Nova Scotia, and they had someone in a big motorhome, Class A, who had major problems. I think they were from France. And their rig stayed, they allowed them to leave their rig there for 4 weeks because they had to go back to France. Like, they ran out of time. They had to go back to France, but the rig needed to be fixed and they were waiting for a part. And so they let them park in their spot for, I think it was 4 weeks or something. And then they came back from France, got it fixed. And anyway, they actually flew our friends over to France for a holiday as a thank you for letting them stay. They didn't know what else they would have done because they couldn't keep it at the mechanics at the dealership. Like, they couldn't keep it there. They don't know what they would have done.
And it was totally safe.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, because when you come up against something like that, like if I had a driveway, if I wasn't full-timing, 100%, I would have someone stay in there, because I know the struggle can be so real sometimes when you're out of luck, you're up a creek, you're somewhere you don't know, and you just wish you had some friendly people to help you out. And that's what Boondockers Welcome is.
Yeah.
And for women traveling alone, it couldn't get any safer for women traveling alone. You know that you are.
Well, they can look at us as a host,
look at
right?
us, yeah.
They can see who we are, and they can see that we're, a couple. And if it was a single man who was being a host, that might be a problem. But with a lot of single women traveling, they see there's a nice couple. I will be very safe staying there.
Yeah, and we're dog friendly. I think more and more people are traveling with their pets, and
Now, we tried to keep a couple of the pets. Maybe they wouldn't notice that their dog stayed here for a week or two. But
that's right, Roy and Sarah. If you're watching this, we do want your puppy.
We have a cat that wanders, and we'll ask, but we'll say, hey, we've got a little tracker and we can live track him on our app, and he loves to go outside and explore. So we'll let him out when we're traveling, and people just think he's the sweetest thing. They want to keep him forever, but he's mine.
Exactly.
We've talked a lot about what you like about hosting, but if you could pinpoint one favorite thing, like, what's your favorite thing about hosting?
you never know who you're going to meet. And it's people, like you from the other side of the country, the other side of the world. and you realize there's not that much that separates you. We do have a couple of caveats that we don't bring up U.S. politics or things that can be
Good one.
thorny. If someone wants to talk it, we'll absolutely have a debate about it. But it's interesting. It's interesting, to hear the European view of North America. So it's almost just that sort of treasure of discovery, really. And we've gone as far as our backyard to find it, and we've learned more about, Switzerland and what's it like to boondock and travel through Europe
And
and
Denmark
and Denmark
and Germany.
and it's helped us in our plan. It's part of our plan to go that way. And it's helped us in our planning. First off, we now have at least 4 or 5 people we can call or Facebook or, connect with to get some ideas of how to travel in the Netherlands, for example.
I think the second most important thing, or second, I think, thing is the technology. This wouldn't be able to happen if Boondockers didn't have the technology for us to be able to do this. To be able to look at someone and say, I'm not really comfortable with with their rig. I'm not comfortable with them coming in with that rig, or whatever reason. We are one of the people who will take a new person who has no reviews, because there's 2 of us, and so I feel safe. We're okay with taking people, and they need reviews, right? If people are going to accept them as a boondocker, then they need the reviews. And I think that's the other thing is, everybody, please do reviews, whether you're a boondocker host or a boondocker. Please write reviews about the people who who are hosting you or who you are hosting. That's really important, because we as hosts look at those reviews.
That is very true. And on the Harvest Host side of things too, you've kind of got to build that rating a little bit and make sure, because people want to know that you're legit. So that's really cool that you're taking people in and kind of giving them a head start there.
Yeah. I mean, I think Harvest Host is a little different because you're dealing with especially the craft breweries or the wineries or places that are maybe busy until 11 o'clock at night. You need to be able to understand that might be what you're going into. So if you've got kids or lots of pets or whatever, that might not be the thing for you. So rather than putting yourself in that situation and then complaining about it, which I've also read, maybe you should think about whether that's appropriate for your type of travel.
Yeah, that's very true. I would consider the big difference between the 2 programs, that I've noticed, is that I like to think of traveling and like being in situations in terms of kind of flipping through channels on a TV, if you will, right? So going to a Boondockers Welcome Host, I feel like I'm on National Geographic, and I'm just meeting. I feel like I've put myself in a situation where I'm meeting people and I'm talking to people who have just such specific interests most of the time.
Yes.
I met someone who was in charge of the preservation of his reservation in California.
Wow.
And he was telling me all about the excavations they were doing in the area and how they were trying to preserve their Native American heritage, and was just giving us all of this information that you really couldn't find anywhere online.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to hear it firsthand and to dip into that world a little bit. And that's what I've noticed with Boondockers Welcome. You just meet the best people with the most interesting hobbies.
Right.
It's also a bit of a challenge as a host to become an ambassador for your area of the country.
Right.
We've had to do some research, and as Judy said, we try to get material from our local tourist bureau so that we can give people a little package when they get here. Here's the waterfowl park map. Here's how you get in, how you get out. And then, depending on the relationship that very quickly develops, because you have almost always have a common interest in travel of some sort. Either us as a host, we've traveled, or we're going to travel, or, we do other kinds of travel other than now that we've sold our motorhome. So it's interesting to see how we sold it, but we haven't gotten out of the business. We're hoping Santa comes by with a 26-foot Airstream, but we're not quite sure if we can get it from Connecticut or not. But you because you become a host, you take so much for granted about your own area of the country. And even though, what you consider normal, that this couple from Switzerland who came through, we took them to this pub that was just about 15 minutes away from the house that just opened. And they were asking us, what kind of wildlife would they expect to see in New Brunswick? Could they see a moose? And as we're driving down the road at 50 miles an hour, we said, this is not where we want to see the moose. Just let's clarify that. But we did come around the corner, and in an open field was a porcupine, and they had never seen a porcupine before. So we stopped
porcupines in Switzerland.
so we stopped the car, and of course, the young lady asked, "Can we get out and pet it?" And we went, "No, you don't pet porcupines in Canada. It's just not a good thing to do."
Pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as they were heading across, I'm sure they saw all kinds of wildlife, but their first and probably most memorable thing for them is, why don't you pet a porcupine in Canada?
Yeah.
You learn something new every day, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, at least we were able to tell them before they figured it out on their own.
That would have been a painful day for them.
Yes.
Exactly. I think that'd be for us this summer because we've had so many rigs through. And honestly, I don't think we've had one that's been the same. So out of 24 or 25 rigs, none of them have been the same. It's an opportunity for us to look at them and go, okay, which one do we want? Because we realized after being without our motorhome for a season, we really miss it.
Yeah.
And so I think we're secretly looking again. I don't know, but I think we're secretly looking. We just can't decide whether we buy it here or we go over to Europe and buy one over there and do some traveling around Europe. So it's it's a process.
I I've heard that before, and almost in every Facebook Live I've done with hosts is that it's a rotating RV show that comes right into their
is.
driveway.
Yeah.
And they kind of get to figure out, because it is hard, you go in, you're either buying it used or you're going into a dealership and you're looking around and you're only seeing it at one time of day. You're opening
Yeah.
the cabinets maybe once, but seeing what people have done with it and seeing where people have put stuff. Oh my goodness, people get so
Yeah.
creative, and it gives you so many good ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've had a couple of towed vehicles as well, because there were small trailers on the back of relatively small vehicles. And we've seen, rigs that are good setups and rigs that are, ooh, I don't think I'd be comfortable driving that kind of setup.
Yeah.
But as you said, we moved out of a 37-foot Class A. And when you see some of the very small Class Bs, we go, okay, somewhere in between gigantic and tiny, tiny is the rig for us, right?
Honestly, on day 3 of rain, the 37-foot was too small.
I feel you there. Something that can close. You have to have a room that can close off. And
Yes.
see, I like the tow vehicles because then someone can stay and someone can go if
Yeah.
it gets to be too much, right? So
Yeah.
you're like, I'm gonna hit a cafe, I'm gonna go to a movie. You enjoy our beautiful small home, and I will be
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, and it allows you to go sightseeing without taking your whole rig with you. If you're staying someplace for a week or 2 weeks or something, you don't have to keep moving. If your whole idea is to explore the area, then you have that ability.
Yeah, Judy used to chase me. I used to drive the rig, and Judy used to chase me in our SUV. And that was great because that gave her 2 hours to go if she wanted to stop at a quilt store, because I sure didn't want to stop at another quilt store, or pick up some groceries or whatever. And I could go, fuel up, get set up in the campsite, and she'd just roar in, and everybody had had their piece of the day to themselves.
Or I sometimes would go to the campsite ahead of time to see where they had put us, to see if it made sense for our rig to be there. And I mean, a couple of times it saved our bacon because the site they gave us was actually flooded out and they just didn't realize it. Yeah, so we had to go to a couple different sites before we found one that would work for us. And even then it was,
We punked a bit.
I think we left a bit early just because we knew that it was going to be hard to get out. So
But having that second vehicle, is again sort of that safety net that if the rig breaks down or if the
Yeah.
car breaks down, you've got something else to travel with.
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's kind of like having Boondockers, because if you've been through the area or you've been through Boondockers, they're a pretty safe person to call if you need something, if you need to park your rig. Pretty good chance that a Boondocker is going to be your best response.
Yeah, I mean, like us, we knew a mechanic. It's a small town. We just called our mechanic up, and he was more than willing to help her out of his purview of you know,
It's a busy day.
his busy day. So
He was a father too, right? And he saw this 20-year-old girl crying in his driveway. And he said, yeah, I'll absolutely will help her out.
Mm,
So
mm. There's just, you can't beat it. And being able to plug in to a local community is so
Yeah.
key, right? Because you can travel and travel all day long, but sometimes you just pass right through a town and
Yeah.
you know you missed some gems, but you don't have the time to look for them and you don't know where
Yeah,
to look
no,
for them.
and the people who live in that small town, like maybe there's only one gym in that small town, but guarantee you the boondocker in that small town knows what it is,
mhm.
whether it's a restaurant or a bakery or the best place to get coffee or something.
Mhm.
And that's what we point people here and say within walking distance you've got this, 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 and this, and pick and choose, do what you want.
Mhm.
But otherwise, most people would have just driven through our small town and not seen any of it.
Yeah.
And that's another great thing about Boondockers Welcome, because something when my husband and I started, we were just ripping through because we had long stretches to go, right? You're at the end of the day, you get into an RV park, you hate each other, you're just trying to figure it out, right? And you're trying to get plugged in, you're trying to get the cat fed, all of that good stuff. And that we very quickly realized that that was not the way to travel, that you
Yeah,
should
we
take
did
the
that too.
time. Yeah, yeah. You're like, it's just like a car, I can get there. And you realize it really takes you like double the time to get somewhere. And you're just
Yeah.
suffering going into Walmart parking lots. But really it's about the journey and what are we doing on the road, but trying to expand our minds and
Yeah.
and expand our lives.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
and that's the ad.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is.
And,
Yeah.
and depending on the type of travel, when we were full timing it and thinking we were going to full time it for 5 years, we had to, for me, the peace of mind was knowing where my head was going to rest or where my rig was going to rest 3 weeks from now. And there were days, when we would travel after that, where we would say, well, let's just stop here and see if there's a boondocker. So it's funny because boondockers will accommodate both that. I mean, we allow less than 24 hours notice as a host. And we've also had people book us 3 months in advance. So if you're a planner and you need to know where I'm going to be every night, then that's a great system for doing it. But if you're one of those sort of, yeah, we'll go wherever the wind blows us, then boondocking can accommodate that as well. And again, I mean, you can't argue with the price.
Yeah.
Whereas most campgrounds, certainly on the east coast of Canada, we have basically a 3-month summer. And if you haven't booked your stuff in a provincial or national park by the second week in January or February when they open for reservations, you're cooked for the summer.
For the weekends.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
weekends.
particularly
Yeah.
weekends. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe during the week. But if you're trying to travel, you've got to really make your reservations beforehand. And Boondockers is just one more avenue, but it's a lot more flexible, I find.
I agree. I agree. And with that flexibility, I'm curious if you're going about your days, how much of your day does it take to be a Boondockers Welcome host?
Uh, Probably the 10-minute conversation you have when the original request to stay comes in. We'll trade a couple of messages, get a rough approximate of their time. As I said, it could be tomorrow and it could be 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So the day of their arrival, we hopefully have a 2-hour window approximately. Most people are great. We've had people tell us we'll be there at 4:27 and apologize when they're 2 minutes late.
Yeah.
But most of the time, roughly when they're going to come through. And the preparation for us is I take an extension cord and run it out to where we want to park their rig. And we meet them as they come in the driveway. We have cameras so we can see as they approach the house. So we'll see them coming in. We usually stop them before they get, all turned around, and we tell them we're going to park here, we're going to park there. I have a hose if you want water, but here's power, here's the Wi-Fi password, here's some cookies, here's some maps. We'll be in the back porch having wine if you want to join us. So, the whole arrival thing it's probably 10 minutes. And what we find is that conversation can just extend to come on out for a beer in the backyard, and the conversation will carry on. Or if they're pressed for time saying, no, we're just going to get some dinner. We've had a long day. We're going to go to bed. We'll say, have a great evening.
Yeah.
So the logistics on our end, absolutely minimal.
Yeah, minimal.
Mm,
I know that
mm.
there's boondockers who have huge sites that they've built for boondockers. And we're definitely going to go there when we start traveling again. But sadly, we can't do that where we are. So we do the best we can, and try and make it as welcoming as possible to people who use our space.
But you guys sound like an absolutely lovely location.
Come visit and we'll figure out where to put you.
My sister lives down the road. I can take your rig there. We'll just
No
explain to her
problem.
how you got there.
Yeah. We'll actually put them at 10 tellers. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. My husband can do the parking. It's all good.
Yeah.
I put that all on him.
Yeah.
Well, I
He
think
and,
we're
he and the
com-
cat can direct you everywhere you need to go.
Yeah.
The cat can be the
yes.
co-pilot.
Yes, we call him the foreman because he always oversees everything we do.
Yeah. Ours did too when he was around.
Yeah, he stretched out on the front ledge on the
Yeah.
RV.
Oh yeah, yeah, because they know best. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're coming up on time here. Want to be mindful of your commitments. Let me see if I can ask you one more question. This is a good one. Is there a fee associated with hosting? Any sort of cost that you can tell us?
No, for us, there's no cost. I mean, as I said, we provide water and power, but the consumption that somebody can go through overnight, we only provide 15 amp power. So if you did the math on that, you're talking about pennies of power. I mean, they can't fire up 3 ACs or anything. I mean, we don't allow for big rigs. And the amount of water, 40 gallons of water tops,
So,
that's pretty negligible on that cost. And other than that, there's no cost. Our Wi-Fi is extended out to our garage anyway. So if you want to borrow it, here's the password.
yeah, that's what we did. I mean, we extended the Wi-Fi out so it was easier for our guests to have access to it. But yeah, there is just the bottles of wine that we might buy or beer.
And we don't expect anything from our guests at all, and we say that up front. There's no compensation, like we don't want to get paid for anything. But as Judy said, some people will leave $10 for power, some people will leave us a bottle of wine. That's fine, that's great. That's a gift as far as we're concerned. And that's just their way of saying thank you to us. But it's certainly we don't go into it expecting that at all.
We had a couple make us dinner, and they're vegans, which was fine with me. But poor Ian, I had to make a little steak for him.
It would have been a bit tough.
But the thought was there. Yeah.
I love that. The food and traveling for food and sharing of food is a big thing for me. I appreciate that. It sounds wonderful. We'll try to find our way up to you guys next year too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
And
think
the US dollar goes about 40% farther in Canada too, just so you know. Our price of gas might be a little bit of a shock the first time you pull up to the pump, but after that, you're going to realize that, your dollar is buying $1.40 Canadian. So
Yeah.
Oh, please. I did a summer in California, so I'm not shocked. I don't have sticker shock around gas.
So $7 a gallon is not going to make you blink. It's not $7 a gallon here, but
Yeah.
we're cheaper than California. That should be our new motto. We're cheaper than California.
There you go. There you go. That needs to be the sign over the driveway.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're good. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but oh wow, Judith, Ian, it has been absolutely lovely to chat with you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and come on up and visit.
Yeah.
Just not in
the winter.
Not in the trust me. Good luck to that person coming to visit you.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see
How
they're set up. Yeah, exactly. We'll try and make them as comfortable as possible.
Good luck, and tell them they're brave for me. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who's viewing in the chat. I do have one more question for you, and then we're gonna go. What would you tell someone who's considering becoming a Boondockers Welcome host?
I would say there's no downside to it. It's something you can get into and try right off the bat. There's virtually no setup cost to being a host. There's a little time commitment to obviously get your profile and all that kind of stuff and take some photos and get that. But that's pretty minor administrative stuff. And then I think you would be hooked after you meet your first guest. Um, you'll understand why people do it. And the type of people you're going to be meeting people like you who, as I said, you already have something to talk about, which is traveling. Um, and where did you come from and how did you get here? And in no time, an hour has gone by and you've made a new friend.
Mhm.
Mm, mm. I love to see it. And I can see that because I've made a new friend on this call. Well, again, Judith, Ian, thank you so much for joining
You're very
us.
welcome.
Our pleasure.
Everyone, make sure to visit Judith and Ian, review their requirements, and go see them in New Brunswick.
Yep.
Thank you
We'll see you
all
next
so
summer.
much. See you next summer.